Hello, I'm David DeCosmo. Welcome to ECTV Live. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Rusty Fender. Rusty?
Hope you had a good 4th of July.
Wonderful holiday.
We continue on.
Yes, we do. And our guest today is the second time she has visited us, Christine Bogash. And Christine is our resident expert on a very big event, very exciting event, very colorful event that's happening in Berwick on July 21st and the 22nd. And it is, Christine, the third annual World War II weekend?
Hi, Kristen.
This is our third event.
Okay, this is like going back to see what it was like during the days of World War II. And Berwick is the focus because there is a gigantic factory complex in Berwick that I always knew as the ACNF.
It's the ultimate tie-in to the town.
Yeah. And of course, during World War II, they manufactured a specific type of Army, and Marine tank in that. So let's go back a little bit about how the whole event got started in the first place. Obviously, the town was thrilled with its heritage concerning the tanks.
Oh, definitely. So during World War II, that was actually a time when the ACF factory in Berwick produced 15,224 Stuart tanks. And they served in all continents of war. It was actually during that time that Berwick landed on Hitler's bomb list. And a lot of people don't know that about the town. So in 2005 was when the Stuart Tank Association located a tank in England and was able to bring it back home. Since then, we have had the tank, we have hosted the event around the Stuart tank, and the event has grown significantly. So.
And you said you did pretty well last year, which was the second year.
We did. It was phenomenal because everything that we had in our first year doubled in size. So we went from having maybe 100 reenactors to last year having nearly 200 reenactors. Our swing dance was bigger than ever. And we have so many people that bring out military vehicles. It's tremendous to see how much the community has embraced this.
You know, you have to be pretty big to be on Hitler's bombing list. I mean,
think about it. Yeah, Berwick was a target
absolutely.
area.
And you know, it's amazing truly that they lost the war with all the surveillance and the incredible reconnaissance that they had that a lot of the United States learned from in World War II. But again, they had a power-hungry, megalomaniac running things, and that was 90% of the deal with Hitler.
Had they gone further with their rocketry, however, Berwick, again, could have been a danger spot.
Absolutely.
Oh, definitely.
When you talk about World War II vehicles, pardon me, it's not unusual to see folks that have saved what they call the deuce and a half, the big Army trucks that primarily took the troops around. And of course the old mainstay Jeep, the old original kind of Army Jeep.
That's what it came from, that's right.
But you don't find tanks all over the place.
No.
Not to mention the fact that there were all different kinds of tanks. So this was the Stuart tank, right? Mm-hmm. This is a photo on your...
It is.
Let me try to hold this up and see if Mark can come on in on this. Now, it's not a tremendously big, there's two guys on top there, and it looks like a fairly small caliber cannon.
It's not like a Sherman tank. It's a smaller,
no, it's
a smaller
significantly
gauge.
Smaller than it.
Yeah.
So in a tank like that, you can fit 4 people inside. There's 2 down below and then 2 up in the turret.
And probably a little more versatile than the bigger ones because
you
of
can
the
do more
size.
Maneuvering.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. On the other hand, would it not be more vulnerable to a heavier caliber, an enemy guns?
Oh, definitely.
Maybe that's why there's not quite as many of them around there as there ought to be. Now, as much as so many of our men and even our women went off to war during World War II, you in essence had a regiment, a company working for the war effort in that factory.
Oh, definitely. You're looking at, there's more than 9,000 people employed at the ACF factory, creating more than 40 tanks a day. That's a lot of production.
How many?
40 tanks.
Wow. And I think I mentioned last year that my dad was one of them, worked part-time there as his war effort job producing.
Isn't that amazing production line to put out that?
It is.
Amazing.
And it was, remember that the country wasn't really prepared for war when it came.
Right.
So I was just on a trip up in the New England area, up in Maine, and I saw a monument there that looked kind of strange, ultra-modern monument. What it was, though, was a monument to the folks who built the Victory ships and were turning out
Really?
ships so very, very quickly.
That's interesting.
And turning out a ship in a couple of weeks. And here you've got 40 tanks rolling out a day. The event on July 21st and 22nd is at the test track. And that, of course, has direct history with the production.
Yeah, Test Track Park actually got its name because they used to test Stuart tanks at it. It was just what's really neat is that the area where they have maintenance sheds at the test track, they used to actually test the tanks to have them go up slopes and see how they maneuvered. The sheds that are on site used to be used to do maintenance on the tanks if there were any adjustments that need to be made before they were sent off to war. So what's really neat is the fact that here we are having an event at a place that had World War II significance within the Berwick community.
Yes, and I have had the pleasure, and I do mean pleasure, of visiting that test track park. That is a real credit to the community.
Oh, definitely. What we do for that entire weekend, they have their soccer fields at that test track park. And what we do for the event weekend is remove the soccer field. That becomes our encampment field.
Oh, okay.
So it becomes very versatile for the event. We have all of our tents set up, all of our reenactors are there, all of our military vehicles. And what's really great is when you have people come to the event and say, my father worked at ACF, my grandfather worked at ACF, my mom worked at ACF. You know, there's so many different people that have a tie to the ACF factory. And I mean, that's why we're there. We're there. It started as a tribute to our ACF workers. And what we did was bring the war front to Berwick so everyone can see war front and they can see home front as well, because we do have a lot of people dressed as home front individuals. And it's just really great to see the community realize that connection that they have to World War II.
And that was the war, World War II, where women became a big force. Rosie the Riveter, a lot of women in the workplace the first time ever.
Definitely.
Before that, a woman's place was definitely in the home.
Definitely.
They were certainly in the ACNF plant back at that time. Now, what can people expect to find, and what can they expect to see when they come down on either the 21st or 22nd, or maybe for both days?
So the 21st is a day that we really focus on having music during the World War II era. We have live performances by Season Sounds Big Band. We have music by the Catawissa Military Band as well. Different, just to give people some sense of the music of the era, not just having a visual way of taking in the event, but also realizing that there's so much music that, like they might hear a song on a commercial and, oh my goodness, where did that song come from? Realizing it isn't 1940s music.
Era. Yeah,
definitely.
It's kind of a lifestyle event then when they come.
Oh, definitely. And we have so many people that come out just to listen to the bands, which is phenomenal. So there's really something for everyone. So other than having those two bands, we also do have swing dance lessons at the event on Saturday. So that's great because it gets us in the mood for Saturday evening swing dance. We have that at Reliance Fire Hall. And so at Reliance Fire Hall, we have Spirit of Swing. They're based out of Milton, and they've been performing with us ever since our event came into play. They're a wonderful band. Not only having the event free, we also have that 1940s swing dance free. So everyone's really getting their money's worth if you consider that.
You can literally come to the event and take in everything there is to see without spending a cent.
Exactly.
I'm sure if you want to get some concessions that they're going to be available for you there.
Oh, definitely. And really, that was our goal. We do rely heavily on sponsors to have this event come into play because the Stuart Tank Association is a nonprofit. But our ultimate goal was to put on an event that we're able to teach, especially the youth of today, about World War II. That's a significant aspect that it's skipped over in schools a lot of the time.
Well, sure, and you stop to think about that now. I mean, the youngsters that are in school now, including high school, even Vietnam is beyond their lifespan.
There's no
Yeah.
history, geography, there's nothing. There's nothing that we would consider the staples of a high school education anymore,
Yeah.
especially European history is definitely gone.
And I mean, the problem is because a lot of them don't realize the contributions that, say, Berwick made, there's no connection to it. I know personally the reason I got into World War II reenacting and even running events was because of my own grandfather. If it weren't for him, I probably wouldn't be doing what I was doing today if I didn't have that connection to the war.
And he was a serviceman in World War II?
Yes, he actually served in the 8th Armored Division in the Army. So his job was to go in front of the troops, build bridges, destroy bridges, things like that. And he used to tell me stories a lot when I was little. But at the time, I really didn't have that sense of acknowledging and cherishing the stories and knowing that exactly what he went through, because he served in World War II in Korea. But it's just the fact that, realizing that he has those stories, he has those photos, he has his medals, that's what really got me into doing what I do today and sharing events like this with the public.
That's interesting, because so many servicemen didn't like to talk about what they went through, certainly initially, in those initial years afterwards. And yet those stories are so important. I will forever be grateful. I have had a cousin who has since passed away, who was a 3-time Purple Heart winner, all in the same area because they couldn't get him to an aid station for more aid. And he graciously had me come into the house with my videotape recorder, and I was able to capture his story. And now that he's gone, I share that with the family, and they're so happy to have that memory of his life.
It's funny you say that. In my hometown, where I was born, Old Forge, we're just doing this veterans banner on the utility pole.
They have the banners and the pictures. And
yeah,
stuff like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm in on this deal. Not my father wasn't from Old Forge; he was from Scranton, but he had Purple Heart. He was shot in the chin in World War II. He was a staff sergeant. He was with the Battle of Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge with General Patton. And he was a marksman, so he had the marksman medal and all that. And it's they ask you on these forms, because Old Forge wanted me to get all this paperwork in because the deadline is this week. It's like, I only wish that I was interested in the military back then, and he told me these things. It's like I'm trying to guess. If I didn't put my father's photo on Facebook and have people say, hey, he has a marksman's medal and a Purple Heart badge, I wouldn't have known anything about that, because the details back then, they didn't talk about it, as you mentioned. And the details back then of keeping paperwork were very, very sketchy. So you're right. If you have a military serviceman and find that information, the time is now. Now is the time to find out this information, or it'll be lost forever, and that's a fact.
And certainly if you're a young man, and I'm talking about even grade school or junior high school years, very frankly, for whatever reason, whether it's genetic, whatever you want to call it, soldiers are big deals.
Oh, yes.
And when they can come to an event like this, see people in uniform, see this tank, see what a 50 caliber machine gun actually looks like, that's impressive.
You bet.
And
that it is.
I mean, I just want to throw in there, Sunday is our big day that we actually take into consideration all those veterans from all the different wars. We have our tributes on Sunday that we honor our veterans that are in attendance, no matter what war they were in. We have our flag services. We have a Quilt of Valor presentation as well this year.
Were there a lot of veterans from your town in the past couple of years that show up?
We had about a dozen.
That's
show
good.
up.
That's a lot.
So it's just a great way of getting all the veterans that are in the immediate area and from far away to just travel and come and share their stories with us.
What is the quilt you mentioned?
So the Quilts of Valor presentation is actually something that's national. But Quilts of Valor, based out of Columbia County, will be doing a presentation. And what they do is there are volunteers that make quilts for service members. And these quilts are presented to them, whether they saw combat or they didn't, based on their sacrifices and their dedication to the country, they are given a Quilt of Valor. Now we have 2 Quilt of Valor presentations happening this year. The gentleman that we have, he was a World War II U.S. Navy veteran, and he was on a ship that was actually torpedoed during World War II. And then our other presentation is to a World War II Army nurse, which is pretty interesting because we don't really have a lot of women veterans from World War II recognized. So it's just an honor to be able to have that at our event.
Yes, yes.
And another aspect that we have going on for both days of the event, we have our keynote speaker. His name is Dr. Charles Knapp, and he's coming to visit us from North Carolina. He was a U.S. physician, a U.S. Army physician, and he's retired, but he was a colonel in the Army. And he was friends with Desmond Doss. I'm not sure if you recognize that name, but if you heard of the documentaries, The Conscientious Objector and Hacksaw Ridge.
Fantastic movie.
Both of those are based on Desmond Doss. And he's coming to talk to us because he was the specialist on the portrayal of Desmond Doss in these movies. And, just trying to portray him in a light that they're not going to be inflaming his glory and, not overshadowing other things.
This is fantastic.
So we're very excited to have Dr. Knapp with us, especially because when he comes to visit us, he's bringing Desmond Doss's Congressional Medal of Honor.
Oh my word. Now understand, he was a conscientious objector, Desmond Doss, who served as a medic and actually was trapped on a ridge that the Japanese soldiers has taken over and physically lowered, I forget the number of men, by rope to be saved while he stayed up there. Then went back the next day and was wounded himself.
Yes.
He was criticized, of course, as being a coward, even though he enlisted.
Exactly, objector.
And wound up winning the Congressional Medal of Honor. Fantastic story. So this present, what time is that going to be?
So that's both days of the event at 12:30.
That's just, that's enough to lure me down there alone. Although if I come, my wife's going to want to do the swing dancing thing. I don't know.
It's fun. We have wonderful dance teachers, A&M Ballroom Dance based out of Drums. They've been with us since the beginning as well. And they'll also be at the swing dance Saturday evening at Reliance. So if anyone feels that they might have two left feet, it's a great way to learn some dance
Dave,
moves.
this has you all over. And Artie Shaw, Glenn Miller, Begin the Beguine. I could see you, Dave, on the dance floor.
You have to move, though. What will the reenactors been doing, and where are they coming from?
So we have reenactors coming from Virginia, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, across Pennsylvania. You name any of the surrounding states, they probably come from there. But we have people portraying all different types of Allied and Axis impressions.
Oh, you don't have both sides?
Yes, so this year, in addition to having our typical Army and paratroopers and Marines, we're welcoming a U.S. Navy battalion, our Waves group, so those are the women of the Navy, so I'm very excited about that. We're going to have, just in general, Soviets, Romanians, we're going to have Italian partisans, French resistance, we're going to have our Germans as well. So everyone's going to see a very awesome overview of different countries fighting in World War II.
So they're all in authentic uniform and such?
Yes. And what we're doing is, on both days, we were going to have U.S. maneuvers shown, just the way that different United States soldiers advanced. But what we decided instead is that Saturday we're probably going to have a battle instead.
Oh.
So
how do you pull that off?
So that's all based on the amount of reenactors that we have. And we had such a phenomenal turnout of reenactors this year, so we decided that we're going to battle. So what we do is there's an area of the test track that it has some trees, it has some lower shrubs, so it just means that it's a great viewing area that if the public comes, they can see with their own eyes what a conflict would have looked like during World War II. And it's very educational. It beings as we have soldiers, reenactors who they've attended so many events and they portrayed so many different battles that happened, but this is a way of having the public see things that you might read about in the history book, but it's different to see it with your own eyes.
So they sort of choreograph this action then?
Yes. Yeah. So of course we have the winning side and the losing side, but it's just a great way that people can see the weaponry of World War II in action. They can just have a World War II experience of their own.
Yeah, now I mentioned earlier, just in passing, the idea of what a 50 caliber machine gun would look. Do you get a lot of equipment that is authentic to World War II that you're able to show off there?
We do. We get the machine guns, water-cooled machine guns. We get all different types of guns present. What a lot of people, a lot of children in general, really love is the fact that they can not only see all the different vehicles of World War II, but kids can go and sit in them. They can get their pictures taken with them.
Yeah.
And you have everything from deuce and a half to a Jeep to a weasel to an armored car. Like there's such diversity in all the vehicles that come.
Does the town have a vehicle on display? Like a lot of towns, like Dunmore and Old Forge, they have a tank on display.
Now,
It took them a long time to get those.
Yeah, Berwick doesn't. What we were starting with is the Stuart Tank Association. Our original plan was to have a memorial set up by the ACF factory. Well, when we actually acquired our tank that was going to be used for the memorial, which is the one that's in all the photographs of the event, as it turns out, it runs. So we're not going to have one that is functioning be sitting at the memorial. So that plan is kind of on hold for the time being. I had mentioned to you before that we also have a museum building that we acquired. So it's the old Red Cross building that's in Berwick, and we're currently restoring it so that...
It's a coming attraction, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, so we acquired a tank from, it's a Marine Corps tank, and we put a garage door on the building so that we can get the tank in there, and that one's going to be on display. So it's all coming together slowly but surely. It's based on volunteers and just donations in general. So, I mean, it's taking a while to get everything moving.
Sure.
But we have a great team together working on all of the projects between the memorial, and we're still restoring our tank. We've been doing a lot of interior restoration with it. You got to get it functioning before you can make it look
painstaking
beautiful.
work.
Who does that
Yeah.
kind of work?
Well, a lot of that is based on our restoration committee in the Stuart Tank Association.
You get photos of the way it looked, and you do it painstakingly.
Yeah, so there's a lot of parts in the tank that need to be replaced. So there's actually a gentleman who's going to be making some of those parts for us.
Yeah, they all have to be made.
Yeah, so
You can't
some of
go
these
to
things-
the auto zone and pick up.
Some of these things have to be forged.
Absolutely,
and,
index in
yeah.
steel. That's correct.
and once we can get all that interior maintenance and mechanics done, that's when the outside exterior beautification happens. I mean, like that tank has years of paint on it and rust. But it was used in England to fight in the war, brought back to the United States, and then after the war it was sold to the Brazilian army. So there's a lot of Brazilian markings on it. Then you think about this tank, even though it runs, it was sitting outside for more than 70 years. So I mean, like there's a lot that needs to be restored on it, but it's in beautiful condition.
I think people forget that these tanks were not meant to be used again. This was a one-shot deal for this, so nobody saw a retail market 80, 90 years later for these.
Sure.
So you may not have a tank, but I think having the place that built the tanks, I think that's colossal, don't you?
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely. And I mean, we bring our tank with us to multiple events. We were just at Knoebels the other day for the 4th of July. That was our first time bringing the tank there, so that was really exciting. And we also went to Briggs Blues Festival down in Nescapec. So that was a unique venue because a lot of people weren't expecting to see a tank there. But, it's amazing because we get to have all these diverse audiences and we get to see all these people that they don't realize Berwick made tanks. And it's such a great learning experience.
It's a generational thing, I mean, if we didn't bring the news, a lot of folks wouldn't know it because it's not something that you go out to do a feature on.
Oh, definitely.
Just one of those generational things.
Sure. Have you got any kind of hope or wish list in terms of timing for the actual museum being opened?
So we're actually hoping to have that done by fall. It is a slow process, but we have all of the materials that we want to put inside of it. Right now, it's mostly working on the flooring and just getting the basic shell of the museum in conditions so that we can have the displays put in there.
But what a great addition to everything that
you're right.
you've done. And I can see this thing growing even still more with the interest in the recreators from all over the country, really, that are interested in something like this. For the viewing audience, I will remind you that the third annual World War II weekend is in Berwick at the Test Track, and that is July 21st and 22nd. Now, you're going to the Test Track if you're on Front Street in Berwick headed south, which is also Route 11. I'm trying to think if the was it a Kmart that was there?
It's between the Kmart and the cemetery.
So you turn
South Eaton
If
Street.
you're heading south, you turn left, and it'll take you right back there. Bring a picnic lunch with you too, if
Oh,
you'd like.
definitely.
I just got to commend all of you that get involved with this. It's obviously been a big success, and I think the bottom line for the public is that there's a lot to see, a lot to hear, a lot to do, and basically it's all free.
It is. It is. If anyone is looking to make a donation to help fuel us along, that we'd be very thankful for that.
And how do they do that?
What they could do is when they come to the event, they could actually make a donation while they're there. We do look for sponsorships from businesses as well, because they are our driving force behind this
Sure.
event to bring it to Berwick. But if anyone's looking for more information, they can just visit our Facebook page, Stuart Tank Memorial Association. So we update that. We'll have our schedule of events put up. We'll mention some of our vendors that are going to be at the event, and sure everyone's going to get the information that they need in order to bring them out to the
Sure.
event.
Good luck. Good luck with the weather,
Do us a favor.
too.
Thank you.
Take a couple 8x10s, and next year when we bring you back to talk about next year's event, we'll show a little show and tell. Okay?
I'd love to do
right.
that.
Sounds good. Christine Bogash, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Rusty, thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Appreciate it. Mark McGlory, thanks for keeping
Thank
us
you,
in
Mark.
focus. I'm David DeCosmo for ECTV Live. Until we see you again next week, here's hoping all your news is good.